Hey everyone, back tuning into today's video, doing JMA Friday today, having a month-ahead look ahead. It's going to take us into November, can you believe? So we'll be going up to the final month of the autumn. Actually, right at the very end, we might just go on a bit to December, but see how much time we've got for that. But we're going to have a look at 500 millibar heights from the Japanese model, and then we'll also have a look at the CFS V2 as well, see how it's all stacking up for the coming month. But before I get on with all of that, just very quickly to say about the ads, there's links to articles on all the pages at Gas Office. Have a browse through the widgets and click through the links if there's any articles that you're interested in. Thanks so much for doing that. There's also video ads on most of the page. They open up with the content when you watch them, they'll close back up again. So thanks for getting involved and thanks for doing that. So let's start off with the 500 millibar heights, broke down into weekly periods for the coming month from the Japanese model. So the first weekly period will be taking us from the week that we're currently in, the 9th to the 16th of October. Blue is extrapolating to low pressure, and orange, red, yellow extrapolating to high pressure. So for the coming week, we've got low pressure generally to the south of the country and ridging to the west and the north of the country. So things have flipped around a little bit on what you would normally expect. Normally you expect high pressure to be to the south and low pressure to the north, but we've got a complete reversal of that sort of pattern. And it all means that the flow and the winds are going to be coming in from the east generally, with the jet stream going a bit like that. Rather a complicated pattern, but it basically means we're going to have a lot of high pressure influences, especially for the northern part of the country. And the flow is going to be easterly, and those easterlies are likely to be quite chilly, of course. Continent is cooling down rapidly now. Not cold enough for snow, not cold enough for a beast from the east, anything like that. Far too early for that. But certainly chilly, a chilly feel to those easterly winds during the coming week. As we move through to the next week period, it's going from the 16th through to the 23rd of October, what we find with this one is that the ridge, still to the north, but it's more centred to the northwest actually, rather than the east and the northeast. Still suggestion of low pressure down to the south. So it's very little change really, but the jet stream is going a little bit like that. It just means that we're probably bringing some slightly more unsettled conditions into the country, albeit it's not desperately unsettled through this middle part of October, but it's probably a little bit more unsettled, and we could be certainly bringing some cooler air through the country from the north and the northeast. As we go through to the final 2 weekly period, it's going from the 23rd of October through to the 6th of November. Well, a lot of high pressure influences going on really. The yellow colours are still there, centred this time generally to the east of the country again. So it implies that once again the flow is probably going a little bit like that. And we're probably bringing in air from an east to southeasterly direction, so yeah, it's probably still coming in off the continent, which could be generally quite cool actually. By the time we get through to early November, the continent will be cooling down quickly under that area of high pressure. So that could actually be quite cold, certainly cold enough for night frost, and maybe some fog as well. But a lot of high pressure, you get the idea from this that there's a lot of high pressure going on. This is quite a big change from the JMA over the past few weeks, where it's generally been going for quite unsettled periods. But this is quite a big shift from the model, and it does suggest a fairly dry period going through the rest of October inside of November. Not completely dry, there will be rain at times, of course. It is autumn, but certainly drier than average, I think, would be expected with this sort of setup. Let's have a look at the CFS V2. Again, 500 millibar heights broken down into week periods. The first week period going from the 9th through to the 15th of October. And same idea, red is high pressure, green, blue is low pressure. So what we see for the coming week, again, very much in line with the JMA, we've got all of the ridging up to the north of the country, trough of low pressure down to the south. Jet stream is going a bit like that. And generally quite easterly, we'll be bringing easterly winds through the country here between the ridge to the north and the trough to the south. Remember, this is a flip on the normal setup, which is ridging down to the south and a trough to the north and westerly winds. No, this is a reversal of that sort of pattern. If we get this in winter, then it does get very cold very quickly, and we often have to think about snow because the winds are coming in from an easterly type direction. We go through to the next week period, and again, very much in line with the JMA. So after a couple of weeks where these two models have been disagreeing, now they're coming back into line with one another, certainly up to the middle part of October. This is the 16th through to the 22nd. And then we see the ridge above average heights becoming more centred to the northwest of the country. Still generally to the north with that ridge, and still troughiness to the south. So the basic setup is still blocked and the flow going rather like that. But with the trough, the ridge I should say, shifting more to the northwest as opposed to the east-northeast, it just means we probably bring the jet stream into the country a bit more, and we probably open the door perhaps to some northerly, northwesterly influences, which could be a little bit more unsettled. So that's the basic idea as we go through to the middle part of October. It could be a little bit unsettled, but still pretty cool with those temperatures. And then quite a big shift here as we go through to week 3. This is 23rd to 29th of October, and this is at odds with the JMA now. What we see going on then is that the trough comes back, so it turns much more unsettled then. The ridge is sort of breaking apart. Some of it's going up to Greenland, some of it's through the central part of the Atlantic, and some of it is across southeastern parts of Europe. The flow again goes a bit like that. So probably still quite cool under that trough, but it's a good deal more unsettled as we go through to the second half of, or through to the end of October, and that could be quite cold under that trough, so maybe a little bit of wintry potential over the high ground in the north. Moving through to the final week, this is the 30th through to the 5th of November, through to Bonfire Night, and what we see is at the trough, again, it is in across the country, ridge down to the southwest and into the southeast of Europe. Still the suggestion of some sort of northern block right at the top of the pole, but it doesn't look all that impactful at that stage, and the flow again probably going a bit like that, so reverting more to the Atlantic, but probably still from quite a cool source of the Atlantic, actually probably from sort of the south of Greenland, Newfoundland, that sort of area. So fairly unsettled at the end of October and start of November, but still I would suggest likely to be quite chilly. Temperature anomalies from the CFS stack up like this. So the coming week is cooler than average. Will be a very easterly week, so we expect it to be cool. Of course, not talking about depths of winter here. The continent isn't cold enough for that yet. The second weekly period, again, cooler than average. Notice very cool anomalies through central parts of Europe. Going down to around 3 degrees below average for them. So unusually cool. And that's right in the area of Europe where it was very hot through most of the summer. So quite a big flip around is taking place there across central and eastern parts of Europe compared to what we had in the summer. The third weekly period, the temperature anomaly is going nearer to average, and this is where it's turning more unsettled, remember. We lose the blocking and start to get trough coming back, low pressure coming back, so the temperatures lift up a bit. Still rather cool, I would think, but just a little bit less cold compared to what's coming up for the next couple of weeks. And then week 4, going up to the 5th of November, goes a bit milder than average. That's as the flow is going back off the Atlantic, but I do think that could be fairly chilly part of the Atlantic. So I'm a bit dubious that it would actually get that warm. And notice most of Europe again going significantly warmer than average by that point. So really unusual sort of changes going on, quite extreme changes going on with these temperature anomalies over relatively short time frames. The precipitation, you'll not be surprised to know that we've blocked high pressure conditions through the coming week, going to be significantly drier than average. Week 2, again, generally drier than average, but a little bit more unsettled, perhaps especially in the east. So I think mid-October could bring some rainfall through, but not a great deal. Then it turns a good deal more unsettled into the end of October, and the rainfall anomalies are going or hinting at being a little bit above average. And then the final week going to the start of November, again it's average to slightly above average rainfall. So definitely a change going on there at the end of October. It looks like the Atlantic begins to break through, brings low pressure back, which perhaps lifts the temperatures a little bit, but I would think still probably quite cool actually. And we bring more in way of precipitation in as well. Here we have the CFS city temperature forecast for Birmingham from website weatherweb.net for the next 6 weeks. You can find a link to WeatherWeb on the links page. Dates are on the bottom of the graph. Temperatures on the side. So generally quite cool conditions going through most of October up to around the 25th, 26th. Looks generally quite cool. Then we get a push up in the temperatures. I think the CFS was seeing that, but at the end of October the temperature normally was going a bit above average. Looks like it doesn't last all that long though. We get through to the start of November and it looks like it's going quite cool again. And then a big drop in temperature takes place sometime, when is that on the bottom of the chart? Probably around the 10th of November. Big drop in temperature takes place. That could be the first northerly plunge of the season, and goes really cold for the start of November. Looking at maximum temperatures around 4 or 5 degrees at best, with several frosty nights being indicated. And then as we go through to the middle part of November, the temperatures begin to stage a recovery again. That is quite a significant cold snap being indicated there around the end of the first week of November and through the second week up to the middle part of the month. These are highly speculative charts, of course, and they do change day by day, so do check these out at weatherweb.net. But if that's right, we get our first sort of cold plunge of the season sometime in the first part of November. The 500 millibar height anomaly for November looks like this. A lot of blocking being indicated here over the top of the pole, with a trough underneath it. So that looks pretty cold actually for November. CFS this morning, these do change day by day, but the jet stream is coming through the country underneath all that northern blocking. That's quite a cold trough. You wouldn't be at all surprised if there's some early wintry weather actually for November on that setup. But for December, things then shift to a more normal pattern, which is low pressure to the north around Iceland, ridging down to the south and bringing the jet stream right through the country like that. So things for December on this particular run of the CFS V2, and I say these do change on a day-by-day basis, but things for November looking quite cold and potentially some early wintry weather. Then we get through to December and it all starts to go back to the sort of typical winter pattern, which is westerly and a low pressure around Iceland, a ridge through central parts of Europe. So lots to chew on there. The stuff about November and December really is just for fun and not to be relied upon. For October, it looks like we're going to keep these blocked of very dry but chilly conditions going up to the middle part of the month, and then we get through to the end of the month. We might get some sort of a change, but the CFS B2 and the JMA sort of in disagreement about the second half of, or the end of October into the start of November. The JMA wants to keep the ridge going close to us, whereas the CFS wants to turn it more in the centre. So a bit of a discrepancy about that. But certainly up to the end of October, I think we're looking at quite a lot of cool, blocked and fairly dry weather, and then possibly a change to something more unsettled at the end of the month, taking us through to the start of November. Right, that's all very speculative. Tomorrow we will be doing the weekend forecast with sort of short range models, so come back for that. And that's all for now. Thanks for watching.